all seen Ian Garry and Colby Covington go at it online. And it's important to give some objective truths to this matter at hand because, to be quite honest with you, many people, especially in the MMA YouTube space, are sort of given their own narrative to what is going on between these two men. For example, let's take Ian Garry as one example. I got to tell you, fresh off the bat, okay, that I don't agree with his lifestyle whatsoever. I don't agree with the fact that he wants to change his last name to his wife's last name, and that's not even his wife's last name. It's actually her husband's. It's a whole bunch of mess that I don't want any part of. That's his life. That's what he's going to do. But a lot of you act like as if Ian Garry is a bitch, like you can beat him in a fight. And you know that's not the truth. Same thing with Colby Covington. A lot of you like to down Colby Covington simply because, let's face it, I don't agree with this guy, but he talks a lot of smack, and with good reason. He wants to promote his brand. He wants to go out there and basically make money. Because if you remember anything about Colby Covington, let me explain some historical context behind Colby Covington. This man was on the verge of getting cut from the UFC, and as a result, well, he decided he's going to go and play up a character. For one reason or another, that same character lended him a title shot at an interim belt, and next thing you know, he visits Donald Trump at the White House while Donald Trump was a sitting president at that time. And now Colby Covington is one of the best, I'm sorry, not the best, well, he is one of the best 170 fighters in the world, but Colby Covington is also one of the most popular figures in the sport of mixed martial arts as a result of his antics. And yet, when he went into that fight with Leon Edwards, many of you downplayed the fact that he went out and talked his trash, right? Talked his S. And why? Because a lot of you have this assumption that just because somebody talks smack, that somehow they're going to get what's coming to them. And also, before the fight of Leon Edwards, a lot of you say something to the effect of, well, he should have been saying that. He shouldn't be talking smack like that. Like as if talking smack or not talking smack is somehow going to affect the results of the fight. The only thing that it did was affect the results. Hello, from Russia. All right. Tapping in. We got somebody tapping in from Russia. How you doing? Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you to all my Russian fans out there as I continue to talk about Colby Covington. And I'm going to talk about Ian Garry as well. So a lot of you think that Colby Covington should not have talked smack. But in reality, it draw pay-per-view numbers for Leon Edwards. By the way, Leon Edwards is a great fighter. He's a great champion. Not only is he a great fighter and a great champion, but Leon Edwards is also, unfortunately, in the eyes of many casual fans and maybe even hardcore fans, a boring fighter. Now, why is he a boring fighter, according to many people? Well, for one, he doesn't talk smack. And just like what I had mentioned yesterday in live stream, talking about his father's gangster past, he doesn't use that to glorify it, which, quite frankly, I gotta be honest with you guys, could really draw up certain attention. Oh, okay, sorry, he says he's from Ukraine. I see the Ukrainian flag here. Shout-outs to people of Ukraine. Shout-outs to people of Russia. I hope you guys are safe out there in this current turmoil that you guys are facing in a current moment of time. So sending shout-outs and love to everybody in the world. So back to the topic at hand. Colby Covington did what he needed to do in order to draw attention. Now, what's funny about that whole situation, Donald Trump was in the building at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas to witness that fight. And while Colby Covington was getting beat, which, by the way, is no surprise of anybody because that's just what happens when you are a champion that constantly evolves in his face. You guys know anything about Trump, he's somewhat of a borderline sociopath, which means that he doesn't really care about you unless you're winning. And the proof of this is when he mentioned to John McCain hey, I only like the guys that get captured, basically making fun of John McCain for becoming a POW simply because John McCain got captured during Vietnam. And that kind of gives you a little bit of an insight to Donald Trump, but also gives you quite a good insight into what he was thinking while Colby Covington was getting beat up. So now with Ian Garry, I got to tell you guys have this all wrong with Ian Garry. And like I said from the very beginning, it's not a lifestyle that I would condone, nor would I encourage, nor would I influence anybody to do. But it is Ian Garry's life. And one thing that you can't deny from Ian Garry is that he is a top level UFC fighter. And not only that, a top level contender in the current moment of time. And he has the potential to become world champion, especially if he was to beat Colby Covington. Now, can he beat Colby Covington? I'm going to tell you right now. I don't think so, but it could change in the various moments of time. He asks, do you love Ukraine? I love the people of Ukraine. I love the people of Russia. I love the people around the world, and thank you for asking. I wish for everybody in the world to have world peace because obviously, you know, there is turmoil in the Middle East as well as Eastern Europe, in particular Russia and Ukraine. And I hope that everybody gets home safe as a result, to answer your question. So going back to whether I think Ian Garry could potentially beat Colby Covington or not. Right now, in a current moment of time, I would say no. However, I tend to believe that it may change as time goes on. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think Ian Garry can beat Colby Covington in the current moment of time. For one, he has yet to be tested in his wrestling. He hasn't yet fought a top level wrestler in Colby Covington. Although I'd argue Colby Covington really didn't use any wrestling all throughout the fight with Leon Edwards. You got to ask yourself, if Colby Covington is not able to use wrestling against Leon Edwards, how is he going to do that against somebody like Ian Garry, who, by the way, sort of shares the same type of style as Leon Edwards? And why is that? Why is it that Leon Edwards and Ian Garry sort of share the same style? They're both long. One guy is a little bit taller than the other. They both like to use range. They both like to fight outside the kicking range and the jabbing range. And by the way, it lends itself to a good takedown defensive mechanism, in which you saw play out in the fight between Colby Covington and Leon Edwards. So in that current moment of space right now, maybe, just maybe, Ian Garry has a chance against Colby Covington. Now, how would he have a chance? May. My man here said May. Type in the comments the Russian Ukrainian guy, because obviously um, you have a Russian letter in your name. So type in how to pronounce your name so I could call you by a name, because obviously I'm not proficient in reading Russian or Ukrainian letters. But nonetheless, what I was saying is that yes, he may be able to beat him, and here's how. He has to go back and train with Leon Edwards. But the problem is he already got kicked out of that gym as a result. So therefore, I think that Ian Garry may have to find a gym that can help him with that similar style that Leon Edwards has. Because guaranteed, if Ian Garry stayed training with Leon Edwards, he may have a chance of beating somebody like Colby Covington in the process. Because he needs to mitigate his wrestling. He needs to use the range in order to create a takedown defensive mechanism, and once again keep the fight at a jabbing and a kicking range to where it would favor him in all multiple situations and all different variations of the fight. My name is Dennis. Okay. Hi, Dennis. Thank you for clarifying that. So at least we put letters to the name. So thank you. And find God. Shave that beard and find God. King Jake said, yeah, King Jake, I'm not even going to respond to you because, once again, you're just a fan watching. So I don't really care what you have to say about my beard or whatever it is that you have to say. I mean, I'm not going to go into why I have my beard or this and that, but quite honestly, get a life. That's the best way to really put it. But thank you for watching because you're a fan, and get your pom poms out because that's just what you do best. And here I am talking to the world, talking to people from different parts of the world, explaining to them a sport that I love. And then here you are in this beautiful sunny California morning, talking to me and watching me as you should. But anyways, so that's what Ian Garry needs to do in order to beat somebody like Colby Covington. Now, going into the fight, if they were to fight, I think that it would serve great deal of uh, promotion, a lot of banter that's going to come along the way. And not only that, I think there's going to come a lot of controversies with this. I may even see Ian Garry and Colby Covington get into a street fight way before they could even get in the cage, and that is a possibility. However, here's another thing you got to understand about that particular situation that I just mentioned, the potential of them getting into a street fight. You know that Colby Covington has a history of calling the police after provoking other people. And quite frankly, this right here is a coward's way of doing things. Now, look, as I've mentioned yesterday, when I did the Conor McGregor live stream video, I mentioned that there is an honors amongst thieves mentality when it comes to, let's say, uh, gangsters, and even so with professional fighters. Now, obviously, the honors amongst thieves mentality that the fighters have goes something like this: we are professional fighters, meaning that we're either going to fight in the cage or we're either going to fight outside, and no matter what happens, we're not going to get the police involved or any authorities because it is up for us to settle that score. Just like with gangsters, they don't call the police when, let's say, somebody robs them of their supplies. That's not what they do, simply for multiple reasons. For one, you're in a world where you're doing illegal activities. So why are you going to call the police when you yourself are doing an illegal activity and you expect them to help you when yet their entire job is to put you in jail, right? So how do I translate that same metaphor, same analogy with the fighters? Well, it goes something like this. Here's something you got to understand. With fighters, you are a trained killer. Okay? An unarmed trained killer. Not necessarily a killer in the gun or a war-like scenario to any degree. However, I'm going to keep watching because you have a high chance of getting into an accident. Get your phone and drive. Yeah, I don't think so, Abraham. And yeah, thank you for watching. But the truth is, that's not going to happen because guess what, man? I have a different coordination to you. But hey, keep watching because you know what? That's what people do around the world. They love to watch people crash out. They love to see people fail. And if you're here for that, then I'm here to disappoint you, but at the same time also entertain you in the process. So keep watching, and thank you for watching, and like and subscribe as I continue on with this process of explaining Ian Garry and Colby Covington as we stick to the topic at hand. And by the way that my mind thinks, I think very fast. I'm very athletic. If you guys seen any of my training videos on Facebook, you would tell that my mind can operate at a fast rate in which just most people can't. Okay, that's just what it is. I'm sorry if I'm being a little braggadocious or anything like that, but I'm just speaking the truth, and that's exactly what I'm doing when I'm explaining to you with the topic at hand of Ian Garry and Colby Covington. So where was I with Ian Garry and Colby Covington? So yes, they're going to get into a fight, and Colby Covington is going to call the police as a result because that's just the mental trajectory that Ian Garry is on. So why is that? Because here's the thing. You can't do that as a fighter. Okay, we're unarmed, trained killers, and our job is to handle each other accordingly to what we do. And what is it that we do? We train a fight, and if we get into a fight, we're going to settle it in the streets. We're not going to get the police involved because it's not their job, it's not their business. And by the way, the police's job is simply to protect the innocent people, people who are civilians, people who can't defend themselves. Now, here's the thing: in the world of honors amongst thieves with gangsters, these guys can protect themselves. Why? Because if you're a gangster, then obviously you got the straps, you got the supplies, and you got the manpower in order to protect yourself as a result. So, therefore, calling the police is not a normal process in that particular world. And when you are a professional fighter and you have beef with professional fighters, it is up to you to settle that beef in any way that you know how, which is what? You know how to fight, so fight. The problem is, Colby Covington sees MMA as a sport, and I understand that. There are guys out there that see mixed martial arts and boxing and combative sports in general as what? As a way of life, and not only that, as a way of defense. But if you see it as a sport, fine. That's on you. However, you're going to be dealing with a lot of guys that don't have that same mental trajectory in terms of how they see the fight game. And Colby Covington has had a history of that. For example, obviously, you know that one of the reasons why Colby Covington became famous was because he went and downgraded Brazil, called it a dump, right after he was being booed at a fight that he had in Brazil. And as a result, guess what happened? A heavyweight champion, a former heavyweight champion by the name of Fabricio Verdum, confronted him in Australia, in Sydney, only to throw, ironically, guess what? An Australian made boomerang right in his head, only for him to go and call the Sydney PD and file charges on Fabricio Verdum. Now, make of that as you will. Different people are going to have a different code of ethics in that particular matter at hand. Some people look at that and think to themselves, man, Colby Covington should not have done that. And then there are people that say, well, you know what? Fabricio Verdum is a heavyweight. He's not in his weight class. He's not in his weight category. And not only that, he didn't even fight him in the context of an unarmed fight. He actually used a weapon against him. Nonetheless, here's something you got to understand about that Fabricio Verdum and Colby Covington situation. I'm sorry to say, Colby Covington, but you brought it upon yourself. Not only that, Colby Covington sort of plays a role of a gangster in a weird way, right? Now, it's what's interesting about Colby Covington is that he has this Trump MAGA image, right? But he doesn't look like a typical Trump MAGA guy. And let me explain. The majority of people that look like Trump MAGA people are usually these white guys that have pickup trucks, that wear plaid shirts, that are working class guys, or guys that dress like cowboys or something to that extent, right? But with Colby Covington, what he has going on is he sort of has this Ric Flair drip about him. He wears chains like a rapper. He sort of acts like a gangster, but then when he goes out and gets confronted by gangster things, like getting a boomerang thrown in his head, he goes and calls the police. And what's another example that is similar to that? How about with Jorge Masvidal? Now, what happened with Jorge Masvidal? He went and got punched after him and Jorge Masvidal had a sanctioned fight. And as a result, he went and snitched on Jorge Masvidal to the Miami PD. And by the way, he was actually planning on suing Jorge Masvidal, only for the UFC to step in behind the scenes and say, hey, listen, don't do this. Okay, don't sue him. Because if you sue Jorge Masvidal, you're going to destroy our business we have with him. Because from what I believe, just right before the Gilbert Burns fight, Jorge Masvidal signed a 6-fight deal with the UFC, which was very lucrative in the millions. And therefore, it really was the quintessential investment for the UFC, right? So the UFC had to do something. Also, on top of that, you got to take into consideration the UFC has a deal with Game Bread Fighting Championships. Also, Game Bread has a bare knuckle fighting league, which is MMA bare knuckle. He also has a boxing league known as Game Bred Boxing. So as a result, it is all within the Fight Pass network that is owned by the UFC Fight Pass. So in other words, you're messing with the investment of the UFC. What did the UFC do in the process of that lawsuit with Colby Chaos Covington? They said, you dropped the lawsuit, we're going to give you a title shot. And that is the reason why you saw him fight Leon Edwards. He fought Leon Edwards because of a deal that they made behind the scenes. Now, do I have proof of that? I got to be honest with you, no. But all speculations lead to that particular road. Because why else would the UFC give Colby Chaos Covington a title shot when there's a lot of guys that are way more deserving than Colby to have gotten that shot against Leon Edwards? And one particular conclusion can only lead to the fact that Colby Covington was planning on suing Jorge Masvidal, and they had to put a stop to it because of Jorge Masvidal's fight deal. And then on top of that, the fight deal that they have with Fight Pass. So here's something you got to understand, right? That may not be the truth. I'm only telling you in good faith that that is a speculation. And it's a very plausible explanation because, once again, how else would he get a title shot when there's a lot more deserving people to have that title shot other than Colby Chaos Covington? So he gets the title shot, gets humiliated, only because of the trash talk that he did when he went out and told the world that Leon Edwards' dad is burning in hell for the sins that he's committed while he was on Earth. And guess what? It caused a lot of controversy. It made Leon Edwards cry, and it also sort of garnered a lot of sympathy for Leon Edwards as a result. And not only that, to Trump's disappointment, seeing his quote-unquote favorite fighter, and that's debatable because Jorge Masvidal will say that he's Trump's favorite fighter, but nonetheless, it really put a disdain and a bad taste in the mouth of Donald Trump as a result. But either way, that is the reason why Colby Covington got that title shot. There's no other explanation other than the fact that maybe he's a pay-per-view draw. And guess what? In this particular world of combat sports, it's not so much about competitive architecture. It's not like the Olympics where you have a tournament bracket where if this guy wins, this guy advances and go fights this guy and this and that. It's not what's going on here. What is going on here is simply a situation where, you know what, Colby Covington is a draw. Who else is going to fight Leon Edwards? That's a draw. Jorge Masvidal, sure, they have a history together. Not only did they have a history together, but they also have a great storyline because he went, if you guys remember, in 2019, right? After Jorge Masvidal knocked out Darren Till, you guys know what happened backstage, right? Jorge Masvidal was confronted by Leon Edwards and his crew, only for Leon Edwards to be assaulted by game-bred Jorge Masvidal. And by the way, shout-outs to the British and London police, because guess what? Those guys, they crack down on crime when it comes to guns, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to scamming and everything, right? They do a very good job of policing London. However, when it comes to street fights, it almost is like they have this gentleman agreement where, you know what, handle it on your own. And credit to the English for having that type of mentality as a result. So now, come to think of it, I got to be honest with you. I think Garry, depending on what type of training camp he has going on, he could potentially beat Colby Chaos Covington. But we don't know. We don't know until it actually happens. Okay? So we have to wait until that fight actually comes to fruition. And as a result, Nothing has yet came about with signing that fight. There's no particular date. Just like with Conor McGregor, there's no particular date in that fight as well. So, okay, speaking of which, let's switch topics for a second because I sort of want to follow up on the Conor McGregor situation, right? So, within a span of 24 hours, there has been a change of, let's say, uh, scheduling, okay? Because Conor McGregor said that, he's not being scheduled, that the UFC is putting him on ice. There was this Mark Raimondi ESPN interview that he did yesterday, and I got to tell you, it sounds promising, but at the same time, we don't know if there's any reality to this particular notion of maybe perhaps Conor McGregor fighting in the summertime. Now, if Conor McGregor is saying that he's going to fight in the summertime, I'm going to give a guesstimation that that may be somewhere in September. They are talking about targeting Mexican Independence Day somewhere in September, right? That could be a possibility because at this point right now, you got to think who else are they going to put in that card? And plus, it's going to be the debut arena of the Spear in Las Vegas. So you got to think to yourself, maybe there's some plausible reasons to believe that perhaps maybe they are going to use that as a way of opening the show in that particular arena. But you never know. Conor McGregor also says a lot of things, but once again, we don't know how much reality there is to it. You also got to understand another thing with the UFC as well, right? What they like to do is announce your fight before you even know it. Why? Because it's a strategy. They know that you are an honor culture of getting your punk card pulled if you don't show up at a fight. And if you refuse that fight, then that's what they're going to make you look like. And it's going to really debilitate your brand and make you look like a coward as a result. But we don't know if that's the case. With Conor McGregor, he did the complete opposite. He went and pulled the punk card of the UFC and literally made his own fight date, which was what, June 25th or something to that extent, right? But in reality, what he was trying to do was push pressure on the UFC to get him a fight. Not only get him a fight, but also sort of speed up the process of this contract negotiation that they have going on. In other words, you guys know about the ongoing contract disputes that he has going on and the free agency that he's trying to pursue, all in the name of getting that Saudi money and perhaps boxing Manny Pacquiao in the process. But again, all speculations, and we don't know. We don't know for now. All we can hope for is that there is some traction to that statement that Conor McGregor made in the Mark Raimondi interview yesterday. But we also have a track history of understanding that Conor McGregor says a lot of things, but we don't know if the follow-up is a reality in that process. So in turn, I got to tell you guys, let's recap. Let's recap on a couple of things, right? What did we talk about today? The objective truth of Garry and Colby Covington. For one, a lot of people have this misconception of Garry that he's a punk because of a certain lifestyle that he lives that you may not agree with, that I certainly don't agree with, but it doesn't mean that we should somehow diminish his abilities as a dangerous fighter. With Colby Covington, a lot of us like to say that because he trash talks, that he deserves to lose, or somehow the reason of his result in his last fight is a correlation of his trash talking, which doesn't make sense whatsoever. Now, I understand, yes, even as a Muslim man, I understand there's an aspect where you have to be humble. But the reality is, none of that dictates the realities of some fights. Maybe some, but not all. Either way, another thing that we talked about today, the update on Conor McGregor and his contract disputes. So far, this is what we have, and so far, that is the only new news that we have gotten within the span of 24 hours. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys soon, dropping more contents. And today, I'm going to drop a new content on my video section regarding Sean Strickland and his mental health crisis that he has going on. I'll see you guys soon, inshallah.